Well, greetings and welcome. It's me, Jonathan Foust here. Welcome to this live stream, or this webcast, or whatever we're calling it these days. So despite the lousy lighting, the reflection off my glasses, the fact I'm having a bad hair day, it's really good to see you. It's summer, and I am going to be launching into a talk, which is a reprise of a talk I gave back in 2013 on why I meditate. And it was really interesting to look at it and to kind of review and reflect on why I still meditate. So before we begin, a big thank you to IMCW, the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, to Glenn Harrison, Leo Gimo, our producers, my friends at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Arlington. Hey. Big thank you to our mindful movement leader, to Rita Moran, who leads mindful movement at 6:30 Eastern Standard, and to Ray Manioki, who leads mindful dialogue right after this talk. You can get those links on my website, on my Facebook page. It's a great way to connect with other people to support you in your practice. I've got a newsletter where I send out my photography for the month and my updates and stuff like that. And finally, just to say, this is all offered through the principle of dana, through generosity. So no one is denied access to these practices and teachings. That's the intention. If you ever feel the urge to support this, greatly appreciated. All right, that's the intro, that's the updates and all that good stuff. Let's take some time to bring ourselves into the present moment, to gather some awareness and to rest in presence. So if you like, you might close your eyes. Let your body sway a little bit from side to side. Sense if you can find that place where you come into the kind of the midpoint, where your body just wants to settle. And with your eyes closed, you might now just take some time to slow down the breath. And if you slow down the breath, and if you bring your attention to the experience of the breath on the inside, what do you notice? What do you feel? Slowing down the breath is an invitation to bring your attention inward. And the more you can feel all the details of the breath on the inside, such as right now where you feel the breath the most predominant, it has a way of absorbing, concentrating the mind. And now for the next, let's say, 3 rounds of breath, could you slow down the breath even more? And again, just notice the effect on the mind. And as you're ready now, releasing all control of your breath, let your breath be utterly free-flowing, easy, effortless, and sense if you can still maintain the awareness of the experience on the inside. Can you sense or imagine what's called taking the seat of the witness? Who you are as the observer of breath, who you are as the observer of actually everything that changes. You might notice how you may have just a few moments of sensing this quality of the witness or the observer, and then you'll slip away into the narrative. The mind is lost in planning and history. In that moment of waking up, realizing that the mind is lost in either future or past is a precious moment in meditation. It's actually a moment of celebration, mild celebration. And you might find it helpful when you notice the mind away from the anchor of the breath to bring a little smile to your face, to escort your attention back and associate a sense of pleasure with the return. And you might like to explore right now softening on the inside, softening the muscles around the eyes, the forehead, softening the muscles of the face, the inside of the mouth. Can you feel the weight and the heaviness of the arms? And can you let the weight of the arms invite you into a sense of deepening relaxation? Feeling the palms, the belly and the lower back. The weight of the legs. And you might sense, is it possible to relax even more and at the same time sharpen your attention on the movement of the breath on the inside? In this practice, we begin again and again re-arriving, re-relaxing. Is it possible to soften or relax inside right now? How intimately can you feel the breath right now? Can you sense this seat of the witness? Awake, alert, and non-judging. As you refresh the sense of the witness, the observer, you might explore what it's like to broaden your attention. You might feel the breath as the foreground, but also, as you relax, simultaneously noticing the background. And sensing, if it feels right for you, what it's like to widen and broaden your attention. Aware of everything that's changing right now. And sensing if you can let it be. You might explore the following questions. Is there anything that could relax or soften inside right now? What is changing right now? And can I let this moment be exactly as it is? Anytime you focus or concentrate, you gather your attention in the here and now, this breath, and this breath. And when you widen your attention to the perception of change, you reinforce the sense of who you are as the observer, this sense of open monitoring. And you might explore in this remaining minute or so a sense of letting be. Dropping any sense of doing and opening into a sense of being, of resting deeply in the here and now. Alert, awake, and allowing. In the absence of any effort, what do you feel? What do you notice? And you might begin to deepen your breath a little bit. Let your body move a little bit, taking this time for your transition. There's no hurry, there's no rush here. Might be helpful to reach your arms overhead. Taking a long, deep breath, let out any sounds. And welcome back. And welcome Two middle-aged guys see each other on the street. They obviously know each other well. And one says to the other, how's it going? The other one says, I'm good. His friend says, how's your son? I know he dropped out of college and was looking for a job. Is he still unemployed? His friend says, yeah, he is, but he's learning how to meditate now. His friend says, meditation? Meditating? What's that? Guy says, I don't know, but it's better than sitting around doing nothing. That's an old joke. But there's still a lot of misconceptions around meditation out there. And I learned meditation when I was 15, like 20 years ago. Actually, oh my God, 42 years ago, I learned meditation, formal meditation. I'd like to talk about why 42 years later I still meditate. This is actually a reprisal of a talk I gave in 2013. I was really interested to see, wow, has anything changed from when I gave this talk? And not a lot has, but some has actually. There has been an evolution in my practice in the last 10 years. So I'd like to talk around 4 reasons why, why I still meditate. In 4 parts. First is science says it's good for me. Second, timeless teachings say it's good for me. 3, my own experience tells it's good for me. And 4, I'd like to talk about how reality seems to suggest it's good for me. One of my favorite little shticks, you may have heard this one, is how meditation traveled around the planet. Ostensibly, the most classic form of meditation that we're mostly aware of has its roots in Buddhism, the awakening of the Buddha. In northern India, Tibet, the Buddha had his awakening, and because it was so powerful and he decided to teach, many people were transformed by it. So information traveled among the trade routes, which makes a lot of sense. So the information made its way down through India and out to Sri Lanka, into East Asia, made its way up into Tibet, to China, to Japan, to Korea, and now in the West. Now what's so interesting is it takes on the quality of each culture. So if you go to Myanmar, you go to Vietnam, you go to Sri Lanka, you're going to get the orthodox teachings because it went into the jungles and it didn't change a lot. It kept the orthodox quality. As the teachings made their way into India, all kinds of fusions with that culture, into China, fusing with Confucianism, into Tibet, it took on the animistic qualities. In Japan, it reflected back the kind of the Zen quality. In Korea, has kind of like a fierce inquiry quality. And in the West, it's pretty clear what we did with it. We sliced it, we diced it, we did double-blind studies, we scienced the heck out of it. And the result is, because of this science and this Western mind that we are either gifted or afflicted with, or both, there's a level of acceptance. So in the Marine Corps, your unit meditates together. Congressman Tim Ryan, who wrote the book A Mindful Nation, had an experience of going on a retreat with John Kabat-Zinn, was so blown away by his experience, he got his team to look at the scientific evidence for mindfulness. And he said not that long ago, in proposing what he calls a mindful nation, bringing mindfulness into the schools, he said, I've gone a lot further out on a limb on other issues with a lot less evidence than this. It's pretty amazing, the acceptance of meditation. So now you have people who are saying to their school boards, if meditation is good enough for the Marines, it's good enough for my kids. Let's do it. Let's bring it in. So we have insurance companies underwriting meditation now. And what's so interesting is if you have a practice, you probably have a sense of what's been changing for you. And if you don't, You might imagine how taking this practice of calming, resting, gathering your attention, opening into a sense of non-judging awareness and into presence, how it might affect your body and your physical well-being, how it might cultivate a sense of emotional equilibrium and steadiness, how it might bring some clarity and ability to actually concentrate and focus, and how it might actually bring in a sense of awareness itself. So, a little bit of the science. There's so much out there, but just kind of a little bit of a review. Meditation has been linked to dramatic changes in electrical brain activity, increased theta and alpha EEG activity, which is actually associated with both wakefulness and relaxation. And that's the key. Relaxed and alert. 20 minutes a day significantly reduces stress. I did one of the early studies with the Harvard and Kripalu Center where I lived, and doing a full MRI while I was doing my practice, and did all kinds of weird little studies. And later I found out it had to do something around facial recognition. People who meditate have not only a higher sense of recognizing faces, but along with that, recognizing what other people are feeling. It's really, really interesting stuff. As you become more self-aware, you become more aware of others. So there are increased levels of empathy, focused attention, on and on and on. But let me just touch a little bit on the brain. So when you're meditating, and if you can imagine, you're just watching your breath or noticing sounds or feeling the sensations in the palms of your hands coming back again and again and again. And what you may notice or sense, and what science says, is that there's increased activation in the prefrontal cortex. This is executive functions as decision-making, attention, self-awareness. It all shows increased activity during meditation. It's improved cognitive control and emotional regulation. The prefrontal cortex is sort of like the evolving part of the brain. Also, when you're meditating, just imagine this, that there's decreased activity in the default mode network, or the DMN. These are a series of brain regions associated with mind wandering and self-referential thinking. During meditation, there's a reduction in DMN activity, leading to decreased rumination, self-referential thoughts, and an increase of present moment awareness. Now, we know that subjectively, but you can see this stuff happening in the brain. The capacity for the mind to wander less and be less self-referential. There are changes in the insula, which plays a role in interoception, the ability to perceive bodily sensations. Becomes more active, allowing for heightened awareness of physical sensations, including pain and discomfort. It can lead to more mindful and non-reactive relationships to pain. What? So when you're practicing, if you just close your eyes for a moment and just feel the breath, the insula is the ability to perceive bodily sensations with that sense of mindfulness, of non-judging awareness. Now, along with this is the activity in the amygdala. And the amygdala is this almond-sized little part of your brain that's involved in emotional processing and stress. And can you imagine the reducing of amygdala activation? Less anxiety, less stress. There's thicker prefrontal cortex and hippocampus activity. Structural changes happen in your brain, particularly the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus, which is memory, learning, and emotional regulation. Increased gray matter density in your brain, which may improve cognitive function and emotional well-being. I'm just going to go on a little bit longer here because it's pretty convincing stuff. Meditation has been shown to improve functional connectivity between brain regions. It strengthens connections within the attention network, improving focus and sustained attention. It enhances connectivity between emotional regulation and self-referential processing, leading to greater emotional resilience and self-awareness. So we have here, when you meditate, more focused attention, more present moment awareness, more emotional regulation, reduced self-referential thinking, and an overall well-being and connectivity and brain activity, as well as mental resilience. I used to say, and I still say, if meditation was a drug, it would be considered the miracle drug of this era. So there's the science. And because of the science, we have this growing acceptance. So when I moved down to the Washington, D.C. area, and we would have workmen come, and work on the house and so forth, quite often as we kind of get to know them, inevitably the question would show up like, well, what do you do? And in the beginning, I used to say, stress reduction. And people go like, okay. But then I thought, you know what, I'm going to stop being apologetic about what I do. And when people say, what do you do? I say, I teach meditation and mindfulness. And what's so interesting is how many people will say, my wife's been telling me I should get into that. We had one person in particular who was a veteran who was really struggling with stress. And we got to talking about meditation. I gave him one of my CDs, and it really made a difference. It was really sweet. So we have hard science behind this practice. But we also have all the great traditions through time immemorial talking about meditation as a crucial aspect of living a conscious life. Christ famously said, ostensibly, the kingdom of heaven is found within. Just a couple key phrases here. All you seek is found within. We could spend a lot of time just breaking down the following. Be still and know that I am God. Now that's a formula for practice. Because when you are still, there's no past, there's no future. Who are you without a past and a future? There's no I. There is no desire. It's a doorway to pure presence. Be still and know that I am God. The I is moving from the small I to the big I. In Islam, meditation is one of the most important aspects of a successful Islamic lifestyle. As one wrote, when we consciously adopt Islam for ourselves, we do so through recognition and cognizance of the oneness of God. We contemplate and recognize that Allah is worthy of worship and that nothing else is. We recognize truth in His words and in the guides. None of this is possible without contemplation, reflection, concentration, observation, and presence of mind. These teachings all point toward an experience. And as Rumi, the well-known Islamic mystic, once said, what you are seeking is seeking you. I love that phrase. What you are seeking is seeking you. So when you engage into this training of contemplation, reflection, concentration, observation, and presence of mind, you begin to open to this experience of whatever you want to call it. Mindfulness, presence, God. In Judaism, there's evidence that meditative practices have been part of Judaism from the earliest times. In the Torah, the patriarch Isaac is described as going, I'm going to mess this up, lasuch, in the field, a term understood by commentators as some type of meditative practice. So Judaism has always contained a central meditative tradition. You look at the Upanishads, the Vedas, it's all about bringing awareness to the Godhead. Just here's a line from the Upanishads. It talks about the I am. I am the nature of consciousness. I am made of consciousness, of bliss. I am non-dual, pure in form, absolute knowledge, absolute love. I am changeless, devoid of anger or desire. I am detached. I am one essence, unlimited. I am boundless bliss, existence and transcendent bliss. I am the Satchitananda that is eternal, enlightened, and pure. It's a pretty clear description of the non-dual state that can arise when we bring ourselves into knowing that we are God. And Buddhism, of course, looks deeply into the nature of reality. Of course, Buddhism has many, many lists. Maybe the most poignant are the Four Noble Truths, which is the truth that stress, dissatisfaction, and suffering are part of life. The second truth, that if you look closely, you will find a cause for that stress, for that dissatisfaction and suffering. The third, that it's possible to let go. And the fourth, that there's a path. We could expend our entire lives exploring these Four Noble Truths, but they're applicable in any moment. When you experience stress, to look to the second truth. What am I holding on to? Where am I clinging? Where am I identified? When you find it, the third noble truth, can I let it go? Is it possible to let this go? And what is the path that allows me to continue to let go in my life? So in essence, no matter what your religion or cultural background, chances are from time to time you've thought about the nature of reality. And Buddhism often talks of the heavenly messengers of sickness, old age, and death. And oftentimes we feel this sense of reality when we feel sick or someone close to you dies. The world of form suddenly looks a little more transparent than we had thought. And our suffering, our own personal stress, becomes a doorway to our own personal practice. When you begin to see how much your life is driven by greed and hatred and delusion, by the wanting mind, by the aversive mind, by the confused mind, it opens up a really interesting question. 20-second pop quiz. If you like, you can close your eyes unless you're driving. In the absence of greed, what is present right now? In the absence of hatred or aversion, who are you? If you like, you can open your eyes. It's been said that enlightenment is simply the absence of desire, which is a very, very interesting inquiry. When we have this inner calling to wake up and truly know the nature of reality or the nature of nature, we can begin to turn our attention to really investigate what's true. And all these great traditions talk about the importance of pausing, of paying attention, and looking at reality itself. For some, it's dwelling on the presence and the teachings of Christ or Muhammad or Krishna or Shiva or Shakti, the Great Spirit or the Buddha. But ultimately, we have to corroborate our inner knowing with the nature of reality. And so the third reason why I meditate is actually the one that ultimately means the most to me. It just feels right. It's my own inner subjective experience. It's drawing on empirical evidence. So I was raised a Quaker. And I had heard a lot about the still small voice within, which is kind of part of the Quaker tradition. And I have to say that being raised in a Quaker tradition, I didn't see a lot of that demonstrated. In the Quaker meeting, it's really a beautiful, beautiful experience. The group holds silence together, kind of like attending on presence. And when you feel moved to speak, you are free to speak. To be moved by that by the spirit, by the presence. And there's a certain Zen quality to it, because in this space, anyone and everyone is equal. So if a child stands or an elder stands and speaks, they're considered equal. I was in my teenage years during the Vietnam War, and I recall a lot of really angry Quakers. And again, that's in no way to diminish how deeply personally they were struck and moved by suffering and by the desire to alleviate suffering. But sometimes I thought, I'm not sure that comes from a still small place. So this still small voice within is always a question for me. And I went to a Quaker boarding school. And at 15, I had the experience at the end of a yoga class during the relaxation part. I felt a profound sense of presence. I was in my body, but at the same time, I was connected to all the sounds around me, everything that was happening all by itself, this vast sense of spacious awareness. And when I would go to bed after that, I would try to invoke again that place of just wide open presence, relaxed alertness. And a little bit later, I learned transcendental meditation. If you're not familiar with transcendental meditation, it's a mantra meditation. So you are given a mantra by your teacher, and they have a whole initiation process. It does come from the Vedas. It has, you're actually doing a puja. So you bring some incense, you bring a flower, they do a puja to the teachers, and then they give you your mantra. And while I was a little put off by the bells and smells part of the practice, something really clicked for me. As I was practicing the mantra and I could feel this calm come over me, I just knew deep in my bones that meditation was going to be something I was going to be doing for the rest of my life. So far, I have. But what really struck me at 15 years old, I was, 6'5" and about 130 pounds. not brimming with confidence at that time. I felt a renewed sense of possibility in my life. As awkward as I was, I felt some confidence, which mostly came from soothing my anxiety. And fortunately, because there were a few other people who also learned meditation and valued it, we kind of kept it going. So we had our own little community of meditators. It was actually just 3 of us. But that made all the difference for me. It really got me through a challenging time in my life. And that's really why I'm so excited that there's so much mindfulness happening in the schools, because if there's ever a time when we need access to something that helps to self-regulate, to cultivate concentration, to kind of lower that stimulation to the amygdala, it's when we're at that age. I have done some teaching. I did a pilot for Whitman High School quite a few years ago, and it was just so exciting to bring these practices to the kids at that age when I was learning. So what's interesting to me is we've all had that experience of feeling something beyond our small self. You know, a sense of presence that's vaster than just our minds. We've all had experiences perhaps of feeling what we could call flow, when you are so absorbed, so concentrated, that the magic sort of, the moment sort of magically opening by itself. It's just the best experience. When you feel touched by that sense of presence. As has been said, enlightenment is an accident, and meditation makes you accident prone. So it's one thing to have a practice, it's another to create an environment that supports your practice. And I was immersed in yoga and meditation for a long time. And through college, I lived on a farm where we all meditated and kind of worked the land together. After that, I joined the Peace Corps. And I was really excited to share meditation, because all these people, when we did our initial training with about 75 people, on the first day I stood up and I said, well, I meditate twice a day, and everyone who's interested in maybe creating a group, let's all go meet in that corner over there. One guy showed up. And that was all I needed. That was the community for me for those 2+ years. Having someone who was interested in practice and excited about practice kept my practice going. When I came back from the Peace Corps, long story, I'll try to make it short. I really wanted my life to be different. I was teaching in a university, and I thought, I'm not sure I want to go into academia full time. So I got inspired by a friend, by Kevin Hickey, who I met in West Africa, who had crossed the desert on his bicycle. I thought, you know what, I'm going to do that. Well, I didn't do that. I tried, and I completely fried my brains. And long story short, I ended up checking out an ashram where there was a homeopathic physician. And I thought, maybe this will help me. And suddenly I realized, here's a community dedicated to practice. Everyone here is all about practice. And so, as I like to say, I came for lunch and I stayed for 24 years. And I've been very, very lucky over those years to practice very deeply, to practice intensively, to study different traditions with different practices. And what I've really come to see over the course of my meditation career is that all these techniques, and there are many, many techniques. For the first probably 15 years of my dedicated meditation practice, I really wasn't aware there were any other traditions, any other techniques. I just thought, I'm doing meditation. Well, it turns out I was doing mantra meditation, and there are so many other techniques. But what I have come to see is that techniques are enormously powerful, but ultimately to be abandoned after they have served you. The Buddha famously talked about building a raft to cross a river. When you get to the other side of the river, do you take the raft with you, or do you leave the raft behind? It's such a powerful, powerful teaching, because I know for myself, I've gotten very attached to the form of my practice. I was deeply, deeply immersed into mantra meditation, and it changed my life. I'm eternally grateful. At some point, I began to explore other techniques and found them to be really, really powerful. So it's important to remember, and I've shared this a lot, but just to quote Jason Siff, who wrote the book Unlearning Meditation, every tradition you might study in, you'll find another tradition that will give you exactly the opposite instructions. Some traditions tell you to meditate with your eyes closed. Others say never meditate with your eyes closed. Some traditions focus on concentration. Other traditions say it's not about concentration, it's about open, surrendered awareness. Some traditions incorporate movement as an integral part of the practice. Some traditions say no, it's a practice of strong determination. It can be kind of crazy making. And there are two sides to the coin. One side of the coin says, dig one well. Stay with one technique, and that technique will take you where you need to go if you stay with it. Just keep digging that one well. Other traditions say, well, actually, finding your path is your path. It's actually your responsibility to explore different traditions and find what really resonates for you, and then give yourself to it fully. And I think there's some wisdom in that, because each of these has a shadow side. It could be that you are focusing on a tradition that's not a real match for you. In the ashram where I lived, bhakti yoga, or devotional practices, were really a big part of the practice. And I'm just not naturally a devotional guy, at least not devotional to form, maybe a little devotional to formless. But I tried and tried and tried, and it just wasn't exactly my cup of tea. I learned a lot, but I have also found it helpful to explore other techniques. But the shadow side of exploring different techniques is you dig a lot of shallow wells. And as soon as something gets a little bit difficult, you'll explore another technique and see if that might be better. Because whatever technique you choose, you're not going to like it in the long run, because anything you practice is going to be revealing the nature of reality, which sometimes is not the reality you would prefer. You know, the standard joke, if you meditate, you'll feel better. You will. You'll feel your sadness better. You'll feel your depression better. You'll feel your anger better. The practice is designed to reveal what's between you and feeling truly free. And that's the purpose of meditation for me. It's about accessing presence. It's about coming in contact with reality. For many years, I thought it was about accessing the witness, that sense of non-judging awareness. That's the technique. And then I run across some teachings from Sri Nisargadatta that says, well, it's actually about being aware of the light behind the witness. What? It reminds me of this story of this old man sitting on a porch. Someone walks by and says, wow, what do you do all day? You're here all day. And the old man says, sometimes I sit and think, sometimes I just sit. So I practiced through high school, through college, and I was fortunate enough to find a community where I was supported and could help support other people. In many ways, the practice is about not just awakening internally, but finding others and awakening with them. As we would say in the ashram, company is stronger than willpower. This practice is not for the faint of heart. The practice is about truly waking up to reality. And it requires special support. To be able to practice in a cave by yourself would be a wonderful thing. But I think for many, many people, we need some form of support and community, which is an important thing to ask yourself if you want to deepen your practice. What do you need that will support you? Because it will be challenging. That's the nature of the game. So if you practice deeply, you will feel better. You'll feel everything better. Not just your depression and sadness and anger, but your capacity for kindness and love, your capacity for joy. It will reveal everything that's between you and feeling happy. And that brings up the final reason why I meditate. Reality suggests that meditation is good for me. So I ran across some graffiti on a bathroom stall. God is dead. Signed, Friedrich Nietzsche. Below that, someone wrote, Friedrich Nietzsche is dead. Signed, God. As you go through life, you encounter death. When my mother was dying, this was a really wild time in my life where Tara and I, both of our dogs had died. We had other friends who died. My mother's death was not easy. It was painful. It was slow. She was having a lot of cognitive distress. She was moving in and out of different states of consciousness. And it's very, very challenging to hang out with her. At one point, I just watched myself pulling back. It was just too weird, too hard. And I asked myself, what am I here for? And this phrase came into mind, not original, more of a memory phrase. I am here to practice wholehearted, enthusiastic cooperation with reality. Whew. That so helped me. Wholehearted, enthusiastic cooperation with reality. And that allowed me to lean in, to actually get curious, to really understand and be with her in her challenges rather than pulling away. Later, I was joining one of the Kalyana Mitta groups, the spiritual friends groups. People were kind of going around sharing about, how are you doing? How are you? And I heard myself say, well, my wife has been really, really sick. We've had 2 dogs that have died in the last 6 months. My mother recently died. My father is diagnosed with Alzheimer's. My mother-in-law is struggling. But I'm okay. I'm actually okay. And it so struck me what a fruit of my practice that was. That in the midst of change, so much dramatic change, I was fundamentally okay. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts of this practice is the sense of resilience. The flower of practice is often referred to as equanimity, at least in the Buddhist tradition, steadiness. In the midst of change, having this sense of presence. So there's a saying, if you argue with reality, you're going to lose. So why not learn about reality and learn how to embrace it and cooperate with it? And just as there are many forms of meditation, in our final minutes, I'd like to talk about some essential qualities of Vipassana meditation or insight meditation. If you think about your life as a stream of phenomena, you realize that everything is constantly changing. You begin to recognize that life keeps happening. So, this phenomena that's changing, I'm thinking we might close with a meditation, and I'll just sort of incorporate this in here. So if you like, you might close your eyes. And you might reflect on the following, the three descriptions of reality, the three qualities or characteristics of reality as outlined by the Buddha. You might just sense the breath. First reflection, the first observation is on impermanence. And as you watch your breath change, you might just take a few moments and sense, is there anything in your experience that does not change? Can you sense the stream of constant, shifting sensations, thoughts, moods, emotions, and states? This quality of anicca, of impermanence, is fundamental to our experience of life. The second characteristic of reality is referred to as dukkha, or the stress, dissatisfaction, unsteadiness, or suffering that occurs when you fixate your attention. If you hold on tight, you'll get rope burn. If you let go a little, you'll experience a little bit of ease. If you let go a lot, you may experience a lot of ease. The third characteristic of reality has to do with a sense of self, or anatta. That in ultimate reality, that there is no self, that there's a relative self, your body, this breath, your mind. But that small self ultimately is changing, is bound to fall away, and is held in a vast space of presence. So in this remaining minute, can you sense everything that is changing? Is it possible to let it be? And can you sense very gently this quality of spaciousness? Is it possible to find the one who is aware and sense that in a field of infinite, vast space? I'd like to close with this poem, one of my favorite poems from Dana Faults. It only takes a reminder to breathe, a moment to be still, and just like that, Something in me settles and softens and makes space for imperfection. The harsh voice of judgment drops to a whisper, and I remember again that life is not a relay race, that we will all cross the finish line, that waking up to life is what we were born for. As many times as I forget, catch myself charging forward without even knowing where I'm going, that many times I can make the choice to stop, to breathe and be, and walk slowly into the mystery. If you like, you can deepen your breath. If you like, you can let your eyes open. This call to practice is a sacred calling. And recalling as well that when you practice, you are changing the formation, the structure of your brain. We know this now. That you are tapping into thousands of years of those who have practiced before you. That intrinsically, hopefully, you are finding your practice to be self-fulfilling. And ultimately recognizing that what we are practicing is learning how to practice wholehearted, enthusiastic cooperation with reality. May your practice flourish, may it run deep. It's an honor to share this stuff with you. Thank you so much, and blessings in wherever you are.